Mr President, this bill, the Education and Children's Services Reporting Requirements Amendment Bill of 2024, is an important transparency measure. It seeks to promote equality and accountability between public and private schools, and it subjects our private schools to the same reporting requirements as public schools. Private schools currently receive $290 million of state government funding here in South Australia. $290 million of state government funding. But unlike public schools, there is no requirement for private schools to report on how that money is being spent. Public money is just that. It belongs to the community, and it's only right that private schools that receive public funds are required to report on how public money is spent. This is the demand that is made of our public schools, and it's only appropriate that the same demand be made of private educators. Many private schools receive significant public funds, and the public has a right to know how the money is being spent. Let's take, for example, and I am going to use some examples in this speech, Mr President, and I don't do so to attack or denigrate those institutions. I'm more just highlighting some of the inequities that exist within our school system. I want to start with an example from Pembroke, which is currently the most expensive school in the state to send your child to. We know from publicly available data that Pembroke receives $1,236 per year per student from the state, in addition to $5,340 per year from the Commonwealth. Meanwhile, I understand that Pembroke have fundraised more than $6 million for a building project, and the school charges $31,000 fees for a Year 12 student to attend their institution. Conversely, we have public schools in our state that are crying out for basic infrastructure and resources. In 2019, the ABC reported on the differences between the poorest and richest schools in Australia. At that time, they reported Shadow Park Primary School was one of 1,000 schools across Australia that spent $25,000 over a 5-year period on new facilities, while the richest private schools were spending roughly $100 million. $25,000 being spent over 5 years on new facilities in a public primary school, while the richest private schools were spending roughly $100 million. Something's not right there, Mr President. Indeed, I had the opportunity last year to visit, or actually the year before last, to visit my old school, Aberfoyle Park High School, and whilst it has had some significant upgrades, it was disappointing to me to see that much of the school remained unchanged from when I was there. Not very long ago, of course, Mr President, but not much had changed in such a short window of time. But it is disappointing. More money should be put on the table to support our public schools. The My School website shows data on where schools are getting their funds and demonstrates capital expenditure, but the public are not getting clear information on where their funds are being spent. We can't see, for example, whether or not public money is being used by private schools to support advertising activities, whether public money is being used to support luxury facilities such as swimming pools, or on courting donors. Taxpayers have a right to know what subsidies they are subsidising, what activities they are subsidising. Is public money, Mr President, being used to support advertising campaigns by private schools? Is public money being used to employ fundraisers within our private schools? Many South Australians, I think, would question whether that is a legitimate use of public money. Professor Pickley, who was previously the Director of the University of New South Wales Gonski Institute for Education and also a New South Wales Education Minister, has stated that the public have a right to know where public money is going and why. And until we know that in any kind of detail, you can't be confident that it's not being used for capital expenditure. In December last year, the Review to Inform a Better and Fairer Education System report was published. The report discusses the need for greater funding transparency and accountability. On page 20, it states that the panel heard from stakeholders about a desire for greater transparency and accountability, including from families and communities seeking more access to information on the allocation and the use of school funding. Recommendation 6A from that report was, and I quote, "Approved authorities improve transparency by annually publishing their school funding allocation models, actual allocations and more information on what the funds get spent on." This bill will address that recommendation by improving expenditure transparency and requiring private schools to publicly release their income and expenditure as part of their annual report. Public schools are already required to report more than just expenditure. This bill would ensure that private schools are subject to the same reporting requirements. Public schools, for instance, are already required to disclose information on student behaviour, including data on suspensions, exclusions, expulsions, and all of that information is uploaded to the Data SA website. All we are proposing, Mr President, is that our state's private schools be required to do the same, and that this information be reported in their annual reports. This means that the information is available to the whole community, including parents, many of whom are spending a lot of money to send their children to these schools. I would argue they also have a right to that information. The bill will also require private schools to be transparent about the number of complaints that are being made, to provide workforce information such as the number of casual, contract and permanent staff, and the proportion of teaching staff versus non-teaching staff, as well as the number of work, health and safety incidents that occur at a school. Again, really important information, I think, for parents. The data would be captured in the school's annual report, which is then made available on their website. This would give parents a holistic picture when making a choice about schools, but would also ensure that there's the same level of transparency applying to both our public and private schools, because both are getting public money. There is a transitional provision in the bill that ensures that this would only apply for a full financial year after commencement. So that would give private schools an opportunity to collate the information and adjust some of their reporting requirements. The United Nations Global Education Monitoring Report on Accountability in Education back in 2017 found that, and I quote from that report, "Far stricter regulation of private sector involvement is needed to ensure that profitability does not trump equity and quality. While public schools are underfunded and non-government schools are being handed public money," and this is me, Mr President, not the United Nations Global Education Monitoring Report, "it's important that we hold the private sector to the same scrutiny as public schools. This would ensure that we have clear data, that it's publicly available for parents, funding authorities and the community as a whole to understand the private education sector." The Greens believe that when we're talking about public money, there should be a maximum level of transparency and accountability. And this is a simple reform, but one I think would be welcomed by parents who send their children to private schools, but also by the South Australian taxpayer more broadly, as the taxpayer collectively has an interest in how their money is being spent.